Assalamu alaikum. Good morning, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Basically, when we talk about this, you guys, I guess you made this as ESG. Where's Trevor? Trevor, that is an ESG approach by keeping it away, yeah? That's wrong. Yes, thank you very much. That'll be even better. Okay. Well, where we stand today, basically, as we always say, the Maritime, we produce around 3% of the global CO2 emission. Maybe that might sound a bit small figure, but nevertheless, it also shows our commitment towards reducing this figure. Today, with the global fleet, that 3% actually accounts to quite a big number of tons of CO2 that's been emitted into our global atmosphere. And it also gives us the indication that we need to align ourselves to the international climate requirements, mainly the Paris Agreement, and as Captain Shamsi said, for the COP28, which took place a year ago in this very beautiful country. What is the role of our industry in the global supply chain, which was again also highlighted by Mr. Abdullah, especially leading such a big organization in Jebel Ali, and it is one of the top 10 global logistic hubs in the world. So where do we stand in this, and what can we do in order to reduce that 3% we've mentioned earlier? Of course, to do this, we have a lot of challenges, and with every challenge, there's also an opportunity. The challenge that we have is mainly the technological challenges. We are quite slow in adopting this technology. A lot of research and developments being done, but unfortunately, the way we practice adopting these practices is quite slow. Nevertheless, approaches are being made. But one of the major factors why we are not adopting this in such a very fast pace is basically the cost. It is going to cost billions of dollars, for shipping companies to adopt these changes and to adopt these new technologies. And as we all know, that shipping is not the most lucrative business. We go through cycles where sometimes it's challenging for a shipping company to remain on the top of its goals and objectives, but we are also not making it easy for each other, where there are a lot of big companies that actually have a lot of money, and they made a lot of money, and they invest left, right, and center, but unfortunately, they are also impacting the smaller scale companies whom cannot afford to go for such big investments. So as you could see, there's multiple factors here. The fuel availability as well as the infrastructure. Today, when we talk about fuel availability, green fuel, do we really have the right infrastructure around the world? We are talking about LNG as an intermediate solution, and we want to believe that it is an intermediate solution, but the way we see it today, the infrastructure around the world is mainly focused on LNG, yes, with a little bit on methanol, maybe ammonia, almost nothing on green hydrogen that is to do with ships as of today. So there are a lot of these things are just being developed while we are speaking. There's also the regulatory barriers, which is, again, another challenge. There's lack of consistent global regulation and enforcement. You can see countries and regions that they actually go ahead and start implementing these regulations, whereas other countries and regions take it a bit on an easier scope. And it makes it difficult, especially for companies that have ships operating around the globe. So which regulation or which country rule that they should comply to? This is a question that we keep asking ourselves. As I said, with all these challenges, we also get opportunities. And these opportunities are, when we talk about green innovation, especially what can we do in order to get things done in the right manner. the research and developments that is going, well, it is happening today around the world, mainly in developing the right fuel, developing the right technology, the most cost-effective technology, I would say. That is an opportunity for us. Engine makers are very much requested. And I always point out here, one of my friends who keeps smiling when I say this, but it is actually the engine makers. We rely a lot on you, but you guys are very expensive. Okay, please take care of us so that we can take care of you as well. You want us to order your engines, then give us reasonable prices. And it's not only about buying the engine, it's about running the engines. It's about maintaining these engines and making sure that the engines actually run for 10 years, 15 years, or maybe 20 years, but with the most effective cost. We don't have that deep pocket to continue spending. Global collaboration, COP28 is a great example, where almost every country in the world came under one roof and started talking about how to take things forward and how to get things done in the right manner. Green ports and logistics, as I said before, it's always good to talk about green technology, green ships, so on and so forth, but as long as we don't have the right infrastructure and the right port infrastructures, then we will not be able to achieve that goal and to reach there. So it is also a call on the ports to become greener. I know that a lot of ports are putting a lot of emphasis towards developing this industry, but we need you to do a little bit more. And this also goes back to the shipping side, where we need to start adopting more sustainable shipping practices. There are a lot of things that have been done. Technologies are there. Pilot projects are being done. Almost, I believe, every company has got at least 1 or 2 pilot projects to do with sustainable shipping practices. When it comes to the stakeholder involvements, governments and regulators, they are putting a lot of effort towards supporting the industry and towards providing the right tools for the industry, basically to practice the best solution when it comes to green shipping. However, they are only regulators. The end users are us as shipping industry. What needs to be done from our side as well towards meeting somewhere in the middle. The private sectors, which is again in COP28, it was emphasized on private sector to take more steps towards basically towards adopting the new technologies. The investment and researches from the private sectors they are actually required at this point of time. Ship owners and operators, the commitments from the ship owners and the operators is very important and very vital towards achieving these goals. And that is not only towards just only having the right ships, but also developing the right manpower within the offices, the management offices. Today, when we talk about this digital or digitalization in the industry, we need to have the right people who can actually align themselves towards this new approach. And that is basically how to adopt this ecosystem, or what we call it the digital talent ecosystem, where we have our strategies being aligned towards achieving the net zero requirement. Customer and consumers, pressure, of course, is important. And at the end of the day, who suffers a lot is the end user, the consumer. So no matter how much we put in terms of investments, unfortunately, the end user or the consumer will suffer a lot. And we've seen this. We've seen it with the disruption of the global supply chain. The end user basically suffered from it. So that is important, that when we do something, we need to think about the entire value chain. It's not just only about one part or one angle of the whole scenery. The geopolitical landscape. Today, unfortunately, the world is not the safest place to live in. Nevertheless, we are here. We need to basically survive, and we need to ensure that we come up with the most important things, which is basically how we talk to each other and how we try to release these tensions, geopolitical tensions, because they impact the energy pricing and they impact the supply chain. This thing will continue, but what can we do in order to reduce it? And this is basically a call on governments and decision makers, global decision makers, to think about it in a more wider scope. Progress and lessons from COP28 needs to be taken into consideration. A lot have been implemented, but there's also a lot that needs to be implemented and to be looked at in more details. There's a need for resilience and strategies to deal with the global instability. And this is, again, as I said, it's a call on governments and decision makers to look into these issues and try to support every one of us in here. The way forward, or the path forward, how we see it, it's basically we want to accelerate innovation. R&D is very important for us. We need to adopt green maritime technologies, though many of them are very expensive solutions, yet we should not shy away from our commitment. We should always stand up and try to do the best that we can do. I'm not saying here that we need to do everything, but if every one of us takes one step, then that is good enough. Here, I can see it's almost about 400 of us, at least 20 to 30, maybe 30 shipping companies, so that is 30 initiatives. That is good enough to start with. Of course, we aspire for more, but if we take one step, each of us, then that is good enough as a start again. We need to scale up investments, and that comes from owners, banks. We need to call on banks to start financing these projects and ensure that we have sustainable solutions. And green fuel is one of them. Ports, they need to put some money, and we have a few ports here in the hall, few port representatives. I think maybe it's also time for you to start thinking about what can you do more in order to support the industry. In terms of regulations, I think we have enough regulations. We just need to tune them, fine-tune them, because we can't also continue getting more regulations every now and then. Otherwise, we will get lost in the middle. I think the way we need to look at it now, let's do what is possible at this stage. Let's comply to the regulations before we go for new regulations, because unfortunately, that is something that keeps coming up. Before we implement a full regulation, then a new regulation comes up. It's every day. And I said it before in a previous event, IMO should be stopped, run by politicians. It should be run by industry experts. And this is basically when you wake up in the morning and put a regulation without even thinking about the magnitude and the impact of that regulation, that impacts us as an industry, which limits us also from delivering, and accordingly limits us from complying with the vast number of regulations. So regulations should be refined, and at one point of time, we should stop somewhere. You can't just keep pushing regulations every now and then. The Vision 2050, a net zero maritime industry, it's very good. We want to go for it, but I just recently I read a small article where by 2050, the global demand for oil will actually increase by 17%. That's a bit of, a contrary to what we say. But nevertheless, it's just giving us more time, maybe, or maybe more effort that we need to put. So we need to put 20 or 17% extra on our efforts towards 2050 to match that net zero goal. So 17% here, increase in oil demand, needs to have 17% in terms of effort, our extended effort or increased effort towards reducing that way. Last but not least, it's what do you take away from this? It's basically decarbonization in the maritime industry is a necessity. It is challenging, but there's also a lot of opportunities in this. Collaboration between stakeholders is the main key to achieving that net zero goal. We need to work together. We can't work in silos. And this goes for every little part of the industry. And then a balanced approach combining innovation, investment, regulation will, of course, drive success. And I personally look at it in a very positive way. There are challenges that we are going through, but on the other side, there are also opportunities, and there are also ways of collaborating amongst the industry leaders, and there's also ways of taking hands of the smaller companies to basically put their efforts towards improving the sustainability and the green approach of the shipping industry. With that being said, I think I've come to the end of my presentation, and I'd like to thank you once more, and I'll see you hopefully within the panel discussion. Thank you very much.